Good morning, everybody. I'm a couple of minutes late today because we're trying to get set up to live stream to YouTube and a couple of other things. I've got an app I've got to set up, and I just didn't have time to do it. It ran me over a little bit trying to get it done. So I just come back to Facebook. But you don't have to be concerned about it because you're going to see me the same place, same time. It'll be coming to Facebook. I'll just be using a different mechanism to get there. And I wasn't able to get that done today, which I hoped I would. So, but that way people will be able to view it in YouTube and on our, I think on our church website, a number of sources. We'll tell you where those are. But for those of you who watch me on Facebook, don't give it a second thought. I'm going to be on Facebook anyway, as long as Facebook doesn't get squirrely on me. But in the meantime, we'll be on YouTube. If they do, we'll be on our church website and on websites over which I have complete control. Well, look, let me just say before we get into the Gospel of John, I am disgusted, I am disappointed, but I'm not surprised. I'm disgusted by the outcome in Georgia. Disgusted by the fact that we are sending two Marxists, and from all places, from Georgia, two Marxists into the U.S. Senate. These people are un-American, they're anti-American, they're pro-socialism and Marxism and communism. They are pro the killing of unborn babies by the millions. They have absolutely no conscience about it, no heart about it, and one of them is supposed to be a minister. Yeah, some minister. I've said before, Ebenezer Baptist Church ought to defrock him and fire him. He does not represent the lordship of Jesus Christ. Jesus said, I've come that they might have life, not death. I've come that they may have life, not abortion, and have it more abundantly. And it was Jesus Christ himself who said, don't you know that at the beginning God made them male and female, not male, female, plus another 125 genders. There are only two genders. There's male, there's female. That's it. That's all. There is nothing else. And you got these two bozos running around talking about, passing the Equality Act, which will enshrine in our culture, in our legal system, multiple genders, people not putting gender down when they're born and being able to go back and change their gender because after all, that was just an assigned gender. That's not what you were born as. It was just an assigned gender. And there's people who don't believe in God and don't believe in the supernatural, but somehow believe you can have a physical body of one gender, but inside, you're someone else. It's preposterous, it's ridiculous, it's disgusting, but nevertheless, it's happened. And frankly, I am disgusted by the outcome. I was hoping, I said to you all that it would take a miracle. It would take divine intervention because I didn't see in the natural any way it was going to happen. The votes simply weren't in Congress. So in the natural, I wasn't expecting anything, but since I don't have the full scope of God's plan and how God is working things out, I didn't know whether God intended to work a miracle here at the last minute. It didn't work out that way. God always has a plan, however, and he is always up to something. And the something he's up to is always good, okay? I don't believe that it's God's perfect plan and will to have Joe Biden as president of this country because I believe that Joe Biden is a wicked and twisted and corrupt man who's already been bought by his family. He's been bought by communist China. And they spent 4 years accusing Trump of treason, accusing him of being a Russian asset. And now we've got a Chinese asset who's now going to be inaugurated president on January 20th. And his son, as far as I'm concerned, is nothing but a communist Chinese operative. I mean, he's been bought lock, stock, and barrel. So, but that's unfortunately what has been cheated into or voted into. Some people, obviously, some people actually voted for Joe Biden. I can't imagine why, but some people did. But let's face it, a lot of dead people voted for him, and a lot of people who lived in other places voted for him twice, and a lot of people who are illegal immigrants voted for him, and a lot of people just, I mean, I think it's just been a mess. It's just been a mess. But let me say this in no uncertain terms because I don't want anybody to misunderstand me. If you watch me, listen to me at all, you always hear me make clear I use sometimes metaphors that can be misunderstood as stoking violence, but I always make sure people understand I'm not talking about violence. I'm speaking metaphorically. When I use that phrase, I'm speaking metaphorically. Well, I have to tell you, I don't know whether these were all Trump supporters or whether they were infiltrated by people from the left, because the conservatives, whether it was the Tea Party or it's been Trump supporters, have always been peaceful, have always been orderly, have cleaned up behind themselves, have always been the friends of law enforcement, worked with law enforcement cooperatively. And what we saw yesterday was something very different. And I also find that quite disappointing. And I don't know whether, I mean, there are rumors that the group was infiltrated, and that may well be true because it's certainly out of character with the way Trump supporters have behaved. I would certainly have no part in storming the Capitol. I just wouldn't have any part in that. And I denounce that. That's wrong. It's just flat out wrong. We're not at a point in our country where we're going to devolve into riots and violence and attacking I mean, did you see the attacks on the Capitol Police? 4 people are dead. 4 people died in that melee yesterday. I mean, folks, that's simply unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And I'll tell you something. I have no patience with people, and I know many of these folks are frustrated, and I understand that. I understand that perfectly. Believe me, I do. That's not the way to express the frustration. You can't overcome evil with evil. You've got to overcome evil with good. And the way we express the frustration, we'll share that with you a little bit today, but the way we express the frustration is by doubling down on using the constitutional mechanisms at our disposal, which in my view, we have not used effectively. And we've got to begin to use them effectively. So no violence, no attacking the Capitol, none of that. I mean, I spent a whole year denouncing the violence that took place around the country. 570 riots, I think, 220 different locations. That's ridiculous. It's unacceptable. It's unacceptable when the left does it. And frankly, I'm doubly disappointed when conservatives do it. If conservatives were involved in that, I'm doubly disappointed because we're the people who are trying to uphold our Constitution. We're the people who are trying to uphold the rule of law. We're the people who are trying to uphold law and order. We're the people who are saying you don't get to destroy property. You don't get to hurt people. You don't get to do that stuff with impunity. You got to be held accountable for it. And 4 lives were lost, and there are a bunch of people on camera who are going to become convicted felons. This is not going to go unanswered. And it wouldn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican administration. The people who did that have got to be called to account. It's just that plain and simple. You just don't get to do that with impunity. Even Dr. King, when he got arrested, and he didn't even he violated the law, an unjust law, but he didn't do it with violence. And when he got arrested, he accepted it and said, hey, this comes with the territory. You expect to be punished for violating an unjust law, but the hope is that you will so prick the consciences of the people involved that the law will be changed. And of course, ultimately accomplish his end. So violence is simply not the way. It's just not the way. And let me say this, folks. I have been one who has supported President Trump. I've always admired him. I've admired his fortitude. I've admired his courage. And frankly, I still admire him. I think he's bitterly disappointed at what has happened. And he has a right to be. Okay? But I have to tell you this. I think it's time to move on. I really do. I think we've got to look to the future now. We've got to look to how we stop what happened to President Trump from ever happening again. I think we've got to look to how we correct the abuses that took place in this election. I think we've got to figure out how we overcome what is clearly a change. I mean, Georgia, folks, for all practical purposes, Georgia is now red. I mean, is now blue. And you can, we could certainly point to all the electoral irregularities, and that's got to be addressed. But you can't deny that something has happened in Georgia, and the demographic voting pattern in Georgia has changed. And while Stacey Abrams has been the captain of this, she is not the architect of it. She's just one of the people who's being used to effect it. And, I guess, I suppose she's a good organizer, but I mean, you give me $62 million and I guarantee you, I can change the impact, the outcome. You give me $62 million, I guarantee you I can change what happens in Virginia in 2021. I'm serious. I know I can do it. Give me $62 million. Well, $62 million and time. And time. Because it takes time to register voters. It takes time to educate voters. It takes time to find those voters that you need to turn out to the polls. But I tell you what, $62 million certainly helps a lot. $5 million of that was given to her by Mike Bloomberg. $5 million. We know that George Soros gave her money. I believe Tom Steyer did. And we know that a bunch of other millionaires and gazillionaires gave money to Stacey Abrams. And she financed a couple of nonprofits. And of course, she has withheld who the donors have been, but she raised millions of dollars with these nonprofits and then tens of millions of dollars for the election itself. So we can't sit on our hands and pretend that that's not happening, because it is. And here again, the numbers may be inflated. I don't know. But she claims, and I haven't heard this disputed by any conservative, to have registered 100,000 new voters between the general election and the runoff. 100,000 new voters. Now, here again, if that's wrong, I want some conservatives to dispute it and tell me what the truth is. But I think some semblance of that is accurate. Because when you've got that kind of money, you can do a whole lot of things. I mean, you can pay people to blanket the state. We swept in there and ran hundreds of ads in the last couple of weeks into gospel radio stations. But frankly, it's obvious it was too little too late. It was too little too late. So I want, first of all, to tell you all, I'm now looking to the future, okay? I'm now looking to the future because we got 2022 coming up. We got 2024 coming up. And we got to figure out what we're going to do to make sure that we don't lose our country, because that's the direction in which things are moving. But by the way, you know what Stacey Abrams and George Soros and Tom Steyer and Mike Bloomberg, you know what they have their eye on next? Texas. Because they know if they can flip Texas red, the possibility of conservative getting elected president is over. And at that point, we're marching headlong at breakneck speed toward a socialist nation. We can't let that happen. Now, I think Georgia, because these races have been very close, Georgia can be recovered. In fact, I even believe Virginia can be recovered, but it's going to take a lot of money. It's going to take a lot of organization. But I believe Virginia can be recovered. But it's not going to be easy, and it's not going to happen overnight. That's why I am not waiting, okay? This very day, I'm sending out letters to our supporters, this very day, to say it's on right now for 2022 and 2024. It's on now. We can't wait, because there's too much education that needs to go on to try to undo the indoctrination that these people have pushed into the black community, Hispanic communities, and they're going after Asians, they're going after Indians, they're going after Native Americans. I think I told you all this yesterday, but this book, Brown is the New White by Steve Phillips, is the blueprint that the Democrat Party is using to try to take over the country. And what they're doing is they're radicalizing minorities, they're mobilizing them to get them out to vote, and they're also going after young people as well. And if you look at the results in Georgia, it's working. See, they think, and I've read some of the stuff that they've written, not stuff they've written to conservatives to rebut us, stuff they're writing to their own people. They think they've got enough blacks and Hispanics, mainly Hispanics, in Texas to take the state. They think they've just got to get them registered, and they've got to get them radicalized. Radicalized to believe that Racism is the be-all and end-all. All white people are racist, and you got to overcome them, and the Democrat Party is your answer. They're the only ones that are going to save you from being put back and put into slavery and save you from having your loved ones abused at the border when they try to come in and save you from the white supremacy. And you've got to vote for us. And they're going to put black people back in slavery. And they're going to tell every kind of lie you can imagine. Every kind of lie you can imagine. So much so that I'm convinced of this. I know this for a fact. A lot of black Christians voted for two of the most godless candidates we will ever have sent to the United States Senate. They spit in the face of the one they say is their God because they have been indoctrinated into an idolatrous worship of race as opposed to worshiping Jesus. They got hoodwinked. They got bamboozled. And it's been going on for a long time, and it's going to have to be undone. It's not going to be undone overnight. I mean, look, I really believe even if I had $62 million, I'm not saying I could win a majority of black voters in any jurisdiction, because you got to undo, you got to unravel. It's like having a rope with knots pulled in it so tight you can't get your fingernails in that. And that's what this is like. We got a lot of knots to unravel, to pull apart. But you can begin to make headway immediately. And I'm saying it would take $62 million just to make headway, but I'm saying it's going to take a lot of money, persistent over a period of time, to undo the lies and to begin to instill the truth in people. I mean, the truth of the matter is that black son that we hear these idiots like de Blasio and others, I have to sit down and tell my son, watch out, the police might kill you. I mean, that's a lie. I'm a black man, 68 years old, never been accosted by the police, never been mistreated by the police, never been called out of my name by the police, never even been disrespected by the police, and I have been stopped many, many times. I joke about the fact that my foot can be a little heavy at times, but, I'm a Christian, so I try to practice temperance, but I've been stopped many, many, many times, more than I can begin to count, okay? Don't take that literally, but, quite a few times. Never had a problem. Because let's face it, the people that are having problems with the police are mainly these young guys, been raised in single-parent families. They haven't been taught respect for authority. They're out there running the streets. They're wild. They're dealing drugs or they're high, and they're full of anger and bitterness because their daddies have left them. Their daddies have abandoned them, and they think manhood is being willing to fight anybody for any reason, and they're just out there in the streets, inducted in many cases, and fighting with each other over turf. And along come the cops, and they bring that attitude to the cops. And anytime you bring that kind of volatile mix, and you're already in a high crime area, bad things are going to happen. That's the truth. Nobody wants to say, don't fight the cops. Oh, no, you can't say that because they're all racist and they're out to get you. They haven't been out to get me. And last time I looked black to me. And cops don't stop me and say, oh, you're conservative, so you're okay. They don't know me. Most of the time, they don't know me. I have been stopped a couple times where cops knew who I was, but they just see a man. Treat them with respect. They treat me with respect. Oh, no, they're out to get the black man. That's a lie out of the pit of hell. I mean, in the cities of our country, often a third and sometimes a half, sometimes more than a half of the police are black. Oh, but systemic racism still runs rampant. That's another lie out of the pit of hell. And all that mess is calculated to do is keep people trapped in poverty, keep them trapped in bitterness, in anger, in hatred, and in self-destructive behavior. And the fact of the matter is, you can change the statistics immediately if everybody decided, well, you know what, the cops are friends, and when the cops stop me, they question me, or they have something to say to me, I'm going to treat them with respect. Boom. Guess what? some dramatic change in the outcomes. But instead, we get all worked up. People want to fight the cops, and they want to curse the cops out and resist the cops. And this last guy who police were exonerated, he reaching in his car like he's reaching for a weapon. If you're a police officer, somebody's reaching in their car like they're reaching for a weapon and they've resisted arrest and they won't obey your commands, what do you think? You're going to wait till they shoot you? You know, he could have shot him in the hand, could have shot him in the leg. You know, people are so stupid. You know how long it takes to shoot somebody if you've got a weapon? Boom. That's it. That's it. These are split-second situations. But, you know, that's the lie that the Democrat Party is telling everybody. You know, systemic racism, it's rampant. Somehow didn't get me, didn't get my son. And frankly, I've got men in my church. I asked them, what about you? Nope, I never had a problem. In fact, I've got men in my church who have told me, Bishop, I was even doing wrong and treated the cops with respect and got off really when I really shouldn't have before they were Christians. So, but that's the lie that they're going to tell. And that's just one among many lies. Stacey Abrams is running around telling the lie, capitalism can't help anybody. It's based on the profit motive. And all the time, listen, I've got a program called Project Awakening. Go to my website, standamerica.us, and read it. It is a comprehensive private sector approach to solving the problems of the inner city. It's based on the acronym CREATE, C-R-E-A-T-E, C-R, cultural renewal, because you're going to have to renew the culture in these communities because many cultural pathologies have grown up that are going to have to be answered. E-A, entrepreneurship, entrepreneurial awakening. Going to have to reawaken the entrepreneurial motivations that used to once be really intrinsic to the black community because they had to be because, you know, segregation, particularly in the South, you couldn't get things, you couldn't access things, and entrepreneurs rose up to provide those services and those goods to members of the black community. But as soon as the government came in and said, oh, no, don't worry about that. We'll take care of you. The entrepreneurial spirit in the community, I'm not saying it's ended. I'm not saying it doesn't exist at all, but it was profoundly suppressed and no longer the kind of economic engine that had once driven the economies of the black communities. But, you know, the left doesn't want that. They want people on welfare. They want people dependent on the government. See, all these lies have got to be unraveled. All these knots have got to be untied. And the Republican Party doesn't want to do it. See, the Republican Party doesn't want to say, because I as a black man can say this, you want to solve the problems in the black community? Stop focusing on racism and start focusing on demanding that men who father children take responsibility for them. And stop acting like a dog and fathering children all over the place, and you don't have a job to take care of any of them. And you walk away. And then you want to blame the white man. Oh, it's the white man. No, it's you. It's you. Take responsibility for your own life. Take we claim, oh, but you know, black people have got to stick together. How about sticking with your own children? How about that? How about taking responsibility for your own life and decisions? How about not acting like a dog and running and being with any woman you can, and then when the woman gets pregnant, it's time to have a child, you walk away. How about that? Is that the white man's fault too? I mean, give me a break. You want to see real progress. And, you know, if the whole thing is to just create protests and keep everybody angry and bitter and not really make any progress in life, okay, well, fine. That's what the Democrat wants to do anyway. You want to buy into that stupidity, go right ahead. But if you want to really see your children do well in life, you want to see your grandchildren do well in life, it's time to start saying, look, the key, get an education, learn a skill, stay out of trouble, don't have children before you get married, take responsibility for your own life, I've got to go back and find this hockey player who said it, but I will find it. But the words have resonated with me because I thought, man, that is it. He said, in life, there are goals and challenges. I mean, there are obstacles and challenges between you and your goals. He said, make no excuses and place no blame. How about that? How about stop making excuses? How about stop blaming racism? And stop making excuses and placing blame and take responsibility. Say, Lord, it's me. It's my responsibility. This is the greatest country the world has ever seen. And every individual in this country who decides to make something of yourself can do so. It's up to you. That's the truth. The lie the Democrat Party wants to tell everybody, oh, no, you can't be. The racists won't let you. It's systemic racism. It's unconscious bias. No, nobody can. They won't let. Please. And you know what? All that is a formula for failure. That's all that is. A formula for failure. I just read yesterday about Dr. Dre having an aneurysm, and he's in the hospital. Don't pray for the young man and wish him well. Gangster rapper, convicted felon, billionaire. Wow. That must be one of those magical exceptions to all the racism that stops people and people of color from getting their just due. Convicted felon, gangster rapper, billionaire. Please. Yeah, I don't, folks, I'm tired of it. I've had it. But see, Republicans, particularly Republicans, Americans of European ancestry, lighter skin, they're afraid to say this kind of stuff. But see, I grew up in the ghetto. Yeah, that's right. I ran the streets. Yes. I know what's out there. And I know the difference between when I was running the streets in foster care, when my father took over in my life, and there was no white man and no racism in my way. A broken family was in my way, and my own attitude was in my way, and I was buying the culture of the streets. I want to be like that convicted felon who just got out of jail, man. He's buff. He's tough. Look, everybody respects him. Walk over on the other side of the street when he comes. He just spent 5 years in prison. Wow. Yeah. See, I've been there. And there wasn't any white man telling me, yeah, that's who you want to admire. Be like him. It was the culture of the community pushing that mess. And people can change their culture, because culture is not defined by people outside of a community. It's defined by people within a community. Yeah, people don't realize this, but you read some of the history. There was a time in America when Jewish people had the lowest IQ of any ethnic group in America, one of the lowest, when they were among the poorest groups in America. Yes, among the poorest groups in America. But you know what they had? They had a culture of advancement. They believed in the power of education. They believed in hard work. They believed in investing in their children and their families. And now, of course, they're the most affluent ethnic demographic group in the country. That's not where they started. And don't tell me about racism, because I tell you what, anti-Semitism at one point in the culture and in America and in the world was rampant. And Jews were hated. I mean, you don't think Hitler just made it all up out of whole cloth. There was the seeds of that mess were already there in Germany and other places. The seeds of anti-Semitism. But they weren't looking to the outside. In fact, the reason why people, the Jewish financiers and the conspiracies, the reason why they started banks is because people wouldn't do business with them. They said, well, then we'll start our own. Started their own banks, started their own investment houses. They built their own companies. So, what I'm going to do, wow, you all get me started. What I'm going to do is we are starting, launching a new project called Winning Hearts and Minds. And what we're going to be doing is going into these communities before there's any election. See, election time is almost too late. And begin to make the case. And there are a lot of leaders, a lot of these black leftist leaders who won't go along, but I don't really care. I go around them. I'm going to speak to the people. And I've always found this. I found it when I ran a radio station up in Boston. A lot of times you couldn't get these elite leaders to go along with you because they're sold out to Planned Parenthood and they're sold out to the Democrat Party. And they've sold their souls to the issue of race. Jesus is not their God. Race is their real God. And you can't talk to them because they think that that's where their bread and butter is. Their bread and butter is their racial identity. But you know what? You talk to rank and file people who don't have their hands being greased, by some Democrat machine and by the politicians that they know who they get to sit with and talk to and have influence with and get land to build their churches and all that nonsense. You talk to rank and file people, often they're much, much more receptive. They're much more open. Rank and file people say, you mean school choice can get my children a better education? Wow. Yeah, man, that's what I want. Whereas these leaders who want to be among the elite, oh, no, we can't do that. We might leave children in these public schools, and we got more money for the public schools. How long are you going to sing that siren song? How long have we been doing that? And how has it improved education in the inner cities? It hasn't. It hasn't. But you get these elites who benefit from money that the teachers union funnels to them and during campaigns and the walking around money that goes on and all the little, quid pro quos that are happening among these elites taking care of each other and taking care of themselves. You get to the rank and file person and you talk to them about getting a better education for their child. And they're not going to give you the doctrinaire liberal point of view. They're not going to be a mouthpiece for the teachers union. They want a better education for their child. So we're going to talk to people about these things. Talk to them about the genocide of abortion. I'm not condemning people who've had abortions. God will forgive them. But my goodness, how much longer do you go on slaughtering the people you claim you care about most? How long do you go on suppressing the growth of the population of the people you say you want to protect? Believe me, there are a lot of people out there who are waiting to hear this message, and we're going to give it to them. But I need help. Go to my website, standamerica.us, for the education end of this. And if you want to help us with campaigns, because we're not going to be running campaigns for Congress until 2022 and trying to help campaigns until 2022. But 2021, we're going to be educating, winning hearts and minds in preparation for 2022. And we're going to be going into all the battleground states. We're going to be going into Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Ohio, Florida, Michigan. See, I think Michigan is really in play. I really do. I think Michigan is in play. We're going to be going into all the states that have significant black populations and are battleground states in the national elections. And we're going to be going into all the states where there are congressional seats up for grabs, where there are potentially significant black votes that could make the difference, and minority votes, Hispanic votes. We're going to be working with the Hispanic community, the Asian community. Folks, I'm not giving up this country to these Marxists. And this is the thing that they're doing with the Asians. See, the Asians who came here from Vietnam, from China, from places that were totalitarian, they get here, and those Asians hate socialism, and therefore they hate the Democrat Party because they know the Democrat Party is trending toward communism now. And they just escape from that. You talk to some of these people, they come to tears. They say, I can't believe that America is having a romance with the stuff I escaped. You want to get a reality check, talk to somebody who's escaped communism. They come here and they spot the Democrat Party right away as the party of communism. I mean, they don't need to, they see it right away because they know what it looks like. They watch it evolve in their old countries. But you know what? The second generation and sometimes the third generation radicalized. The very thing their grandparents and sometimes their parents escaped, that's what they're embracing. And that's because we failed to educate people on these issues, and our university system has become nothing but one long communist conveyor belt to turn out little Mao Zedongs and Fidel Castros and Hugo Chavez's. And of course, the entertainment culture is part of this because they praise these kinds of people. They love Che Guevara, mass murderer. But let's not get hung up on facts. He was a great man. He liberated Cuba. We've failed to properly educate our people. We need to go after these universities and tell them, all you folks out there with enough money to donate to these universities, you tell them you're not giving them a dime. Folks, I've never donated a dime to Harvard because I really believe that Harvard is doing a great disservice to our country. I believe Harvard is undermining this country. Do you know the Harvard School of Public Health has been renamed after a Chinese billionaire family? And remember, all the businesses in China are owned by the Communist Chinese Party. I mean, don't. They have allowed a facade of freedom and some of the trappings of freedom, but they're a totalitarian culture. And if you step out of line, like what this one businessman did who has disappeared now, and they say he's being, I forget what the phrase is they use, but they make clear, we are working with him to get his mind straight because he dared criticize the regime. No trial, they just pick you up and you've disappeared, you're gone. That's how these systems work. And you've got people in this country who've escaped those systems. They're second and third generation Americans. They've been indoctrinated right back into it by the Democrat Party. We got to educate these folks and tell them, no, that's not the way. That is not the way. So I'm looking to the future. So I'm disappointed. Frankly, in some ways, I'm disgusted, but I'm not surprised. I'm really not. I'll share this with you, and then we're gonna. I'm way late. I told you these few days with all this stuff going on, I'm gonna probably run a little late because this stuff is important to say. Ron Brownstein wrote 10 years ago in the Atlanta Journal. 10 years ago. 10 years ago, 2011. That Georgia was there for the taking by Democrats. 10 years ago, Georgia, we would have all perceived Georgia as being reliably red. 10 years ago, they were saying, we can take Georgia. So because the demographics of Georgia are shifting, and if we could ever register all these Black and Hispanic and Asian voters and put those together with progressive whites, we can take Georgia. That was 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And now they seem to have taken Georgia, and everybody's all surprised. I can't believe it. Well, see, while they were plotting, we were plotting. While they were plotting, we were plotting. And along came Stacey Abrams and saw the opportunity, almost got elected governor. And I tell you what, if something doesn't change, she will be governor of Georgia. Now, I don't want to see that happen. You Georgians, I'm sure, don't want to see that happen. I mean, unless you want to, you don't want to be run by Mrs. Fidel Castro, because as far as I'm concerned, that's who she is. She's a leftist through and through. So is her sister, happens to be sitting on the bench. But then, of course, Obama was matriculated into communism. People don't want to talk about that. But, I mean, his main mentor was a communist. His mother was a communist. His grandparents were far leftists. The boy was matriculated into this far left, radical, anti-American thinking. So he's appointed people like him to the bench. So what do you expect? They don't believe in God. They don't believe in traditional values. They don't believe in absolute moral truth. So that's what we're going to get if we don't do something about it. Well, we're going to do something about it. Operation Winning Hearts and Minds. The PACs will be Operation Winning Hearts, Minds, and Votes. Nonprofit Winning Hearts and Minds. The PAC, the Political Action Committee, the Super PAC, Stand America Political Action Committee. You can, by the way, you can go to either one of those websites. In fact, go to both. Make a contribution and join as a Patriot Partner, by the way. You know, we have a Patriot Partnership where you can sign up for a recurring monthly donation. Because look, folks, we're not a big organization. Michael Bloomberg's not going to write me a $5 million check. And George Soros is not going to write me a $10 million check, okay? Just saying. So we really depend upon those 5 and 10 and 15 and 20 and 25 and $50 donations in some cases. My wife and I contribute to our organization regularly, okay, on a monthly basis. We make a significant contribution to our organization because I don't ask other people to do what I'm not willing to do. Because we love this country and we're dedicated to saving America. And that's what this is all about. That's what we're investing in. So you can go to both, standamerica.us and standamericapac.us. It's kind of sister organizations, although the PAC is separate. The nonprofit can't give money to the PAC. The PAC could give money to the nonprofit, but the nonprofit cannot give money to the PAC. The nonprofit is tax deductible, of course, and the PAC is not. You don't get any tax deduction for contributing to the PAC. Okay, well, once again, like I said, I'm running long, but I'm not going to apologize for because we got so much to deal with in our country right now that I just can't afford to limit addressing these important issues because I think these go to saving our country. Okay, let's go to John chapter 2. John chapter 2. That's where we're going to start, and I'll only take about another 5 minutes and get a little bit into this. I'll read a brief passage and get a little bit into this comment on it, and then we'll come back tomorrow. And eventually, obviously, I'm going to get back to primarily focusing on the scripture, but I'm always going to do a little bit of commentary. I just hope it won't be under the present, rather critical crisis circumstances we are in today. John chapter 2, verse 1. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now, both Jesus and his disciples were invited to the wedding, and when they ran out of wine, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." Jesus said to her, "Woman, what does your concern have to do with me? My hour has not yet come." Now, I'm reading from the New King James Version, so it'll read a little different than the Old King James, or, whoa, sorry about that, folks, or some other version that you are reading. His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Now there were set there 6 water pots of stone, according to the manner of purification of the Jews, containing 20 or 30 gallons apiece. That's a lot of water. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water." And they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now, and take it to the master of the feast." And they took it. When the master of the feast had tasted the water that was made wine, he did not know where it came from, but the servants who had drawn the water knew. The master of the feast called the bridegroom and said to him, "Every man at the beginning sets out the good wine, and when the guests have well drunk, then the inferior. You have kept the good wine until now." This beginning of signs Jesus did in Cana of Galilee and manifested his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum, he, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples, and they did not stay there many days. Now look, just quickly. Here's the key phrase of this passage. His mother said to the servants, "Whatever he says to you, do it." Folks, that is not only the key to getting wine when it's run out at a wedding. That is the key to life. Whatever he says to you, do it. What has God been saying to you? You know, God has given me some instructions, and he's always speaking, by the way, not in these ears, but in one's heart. And I've often, tested, well, Lord, just confirm that is you. So I know that that's you. My moving from Massachusetts to Virginia is something the Lord spoke to us. And we didn't just jump up and do it. It took us, after the Lord spoke, it took us a couple of years to put all that together. But we never lost the conviction that God wanted us to move from Massachusetts to Virginia. And that's what we did. Whatever he says to you, do it. God's got some other things he's told us. He told me and my wife to start a school. We've done that. And there's some other things that God has in mind for us that we're going to be working on. God told me to go on television. We're going to do that. And I hope to launch our TV program in the next month or so. So you all be praying for us. But whatever he says to you, do it. Now, the thing is, you got to spend enough time with God and have an intimate enough relationship with him through Jesus Christ that you can hear God speak and discern his voice. God's not going to tell you to go up on top of a building and jump off. And we're going to show the world that gravity doesn't work. Okay? God is, the Lord spoke to me something one time about expanding our ministry. And when I heard that, I thought, wow, Lord, how in the world am I going to do that? 'Cause I'm thinking, you're thinking, well, do I have the money? Do I have the time? Do I have the human resources? And when I heard that, I said, Lord, is that really you? You know what the Lord said to me? He said, well, the devil's not going to tell you to expand the ministry. And I thought, yeah, Lord, you got a point. The devil's not going to tell you to reach more people. The devil's not going to tell you to minister to more people. The devil's not going to tell you to expand the reach of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So I thought, well, yeah, Lord, you're right. The devil's never going to do that. He doesn't want that. He wants the opposite. So you got to discern what the will of God is. You got to understand it. You got to receive it. You've got to be willing to hear it. And then you've got to be willing to obey it. Okay? Because I really believe that God speaks more to people who he knows will obey than he does to those who he knows won't. What's the point of speaking to you if he knows you're not going to do it anyway? God wants you to be obedient. The Bible says in Isaiah 1:19, if you are willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. If you refuse and rebel, you shall be devoured by the sword. So you got to be willing and then be obedient to the word when you hear it. So that's the first point I wanted to make. And the second point I wanted to make is this. Yes. Look, the master says, of the house says, not Jesus, but the master of the wedding says, you have kept the good wine until now. God does everything in a spirit of excellence. He does everything in a spirit of excellence. You always don't save your leftovers for God. Give God your best. Don't give God the last little bit of what you've got. Give God your best. Put God first. I don't think Jesus was making the wine because he wanted people to get drunk. I think he was helping people to understand that God is a God of abundance and excellence. I mean, you see the gallons upon gallons that he made. And then it was all good because the master of the feast, of the wedding feast says, wow, this is the best. You saved the best for last. Because God always gives us his best. He wants us to give him our best. I'm teaching a series right now on growing in perfection at our church. And I've boiled it down to what I call 7 core values of Christianity. In fact, this coming Sunday, I hope you'll join us at 11 o'clock at 943 Canal Drive. I'm teaching the third in this series, the final aspect of the series. And I'm going to be teaching on the last 3 of the core values that I'm teaching on. And the first one I'm going to deal with is excellence. Christians are not supposed to throw anything at God. Good enough is good enough. It's for the church. That'll do. No, we're supposed to give our very best. That doesn't mean we waste money and we're just needlessly extravagant and just, trying to impress people. No, that's not the spirit I'm talking about. But I'm talking about the spirit of excellence. We want God to have the very best we have to offer. Remember, he used to warn the children of Israel, don't bring me blind lambs and lame sheep and don't bring me that stuff. Would you? And God said in, I think this was in, I forget which passage this was in, but God says to the children of Israel, would you take that to the governor? I don't think it was in Malachi either. But would you take that to the governor? And do you think he would accept it? And you bring me your kind of, we're not going to be able to use this any other way. Give this to God. God says, no, thank you. So God always gives us his best. You know, there's a song that says, and I'll end with this. Oh, how precious and how marvelous is the love that God has for the world. For he sent his only son to save every man, woman, boy, and girl. And it's so good to know that God didn't give us just any old thing, but he sent his only son down to be our king. God gave us the best that he had when he gave us his only son. He could have sent us an angel, but instead, he gave us all he had. God bless you. I love you. Thank you for sticking with me. I know, here again, I'm going long, but folks, there's some stuff that's just got to be said here. And go to our website and check out what we're trying to do, standamerica.us, standamericapac.us, and pray for us, most importantly. Your prayers, I'll be honest with you, your prayers are more important than your donations. Your donations are important. I appreciate those. But, you know, your prayers are more important because prayers will bring resources and donations are ultimately limited no matter how much a person can give. So pray for us, and if you can, donate as well. And in the meantime, don't get discouraged. I said, I am disappointed. I am disgusted. But notice, I didn't say I'm discouraged. I didn't say I'm disheartened. Look, I'm encouraging myself in the Lord because we cannot be defeated if we will not quit, because we are on God's side.